Hi guys, this is Barb with Studio B. I'm going to be working on my water lilies design, so I thought I'd bring you in on what I was doing. I did this study a couple days ago, and I want to concentrate on this area right here. So I have my canvas painted blue, and it's going to be a landscape profile. So now, I liked how this worked out. Some of this feels really dark to me, so that's why I'm starting with a lighter background. So right now I'm going to put in the dark, start putting in the background things that that does not pop as well as the colors. So my palette's really messy this morning, but I have green and then the blue and white that I started already for that part of it. I'm going to add a little more blue, straight blue to my palette, and we'll add some yellow and some red here. So starting in September, I'm going to have a weekly go live like this. So the first one will be September 6th, and it'll be at 1 p.m. So if you can join me during that time, that would be great. If you're not able to join during the live, you can catch the replay. It will be recorded. All right, so I have the green, blue, yellow, and I do want to put some, let's see, I'm going to add some red to this because we'll need it for the flowers, but it's also helpful to have some with the green. Green and yellow are contrasting colors, so when we mix that we get a darker grayish color. So okay, so we're going to start with the little reflection of the willow tree that's above the water here. I'm going to start with the, no, I'm not going to use a round. So I'm going to start with an angled brush. I like to moisten my brush a little bit before I get started. Okay, so I'm going to take some blue and a little bit of the green, and I'm going to add a touch of the red to that. See how that grays it out a little bit. That's a pretty good color for background. So I'm just going to start putting this in. So this is the reflection of the willow tree above this picture. It's our unseen part of the picture. We just see the reflection of what has happened with it. And I'm using this part of this picture for reference. Okay, now I'm going to still use those colors to make a couple of lily pad shapes. So this part of the picture is what I'm concentrating on right here. So these lilies are closest to our eyes rather than these that are further back. So we will have the more of a Pac-Man shape for our lily pads. Let's say one lives right here. And we'll cover some of what we just did. That's okay. We're getting in the placement of our lily pads. And I'm just using the colors that are on my brush. I'm going to let this dry and then we'll add more layers to it. Hey, if you're just joining me, this is Barb from Studio B, working on a water lily garden picture for an event I have coming up next month. So if you like to see the process, this is what it is. Alright, then we'll have one that's way off over here. And the Pac-Man, that's just a good reference as how to explain the shape here. I think I'm going to put two really close together so we don't really see that little notch on this one. I think that'll make it more interesting. And this one will just kind of look like something's kind of going off the page. Alright, we're going to let that set for a moment. It is almost September. So I am working on the things for fall as well, but this is a good, fun thing to do in between time. I would love to go visit Monet's paintings. This painting is kind of a reference of things I would have been looking up. So a lot of his, he's famous for doing the water lilies. And the Japanese type bridge, walking bridge, that have been in a lot of his garden paintings. If you've ever studied Monet, he's kind of an interesting fellow. I believe he had a boat, his studio was in a little boat, so he could be floating floating out to work on his pictures. That's pretty cool, huh? So I'm just laying in some darker colors. I'm still working on that mixture here and also here, just to get a variety. Acrylic painting is all about layers, adding more to create more depth. So some of these will have the blossom on top, not all of them. I'm going to try not to use any black in this picture. So let's see how I do, huh? Add a little more to our reflective business here. Alright, so I'm going to add some lighter areas too, since it is a reflection. I'm just going to kind of gently make some horizontal, like, so it looks like it is under the water. This picture would be fun using a palette knife. Might try that yet in another time. Right now I'm using the brushes. I'm going to make this a little darker, like there's kind of a shadow. I'm looking at starting a monthly mommy and me time. Looking at doing that during the week, one afternoon, so keep that in mind. I hope that will work for some of you. I know a lot of parents have to work during the week, but then some parents work on the weekends if they switch off with their spouse to stay home with kiddos. So I'm going to try to figure out how to work in a variety of times. See how that would work. All right. So my goal is to do this quickly, just to see what kind of pattern we could do, and so I don't want to spend too much time on the go live here, but enough to see how it's done. Okay. I'll let that set for just a moment. I think I'm going to add some cad orange to my palette. I'm using soft body acrylic paints. Some of it's a lot thinner, looser. So, okay. Let's see here. So I think while I'm letting that dry, then we're going to focus on this area here. I like how these turned out, and this is a good one. So I might just do 3 blossoms, and the rest might just be the extra lilies pads. So yeah, I think that's a good plan. So I'm going to use this 1/2 inch angle brush. Let's do red, red, and a white one here. So I'm going to pick up some red, and this is going to turn dark at first because what's underneath is not dry yet. So I am expecting that. And because these are bigger, I can zoom in on the petals a little more than I did on the other study that I did. So Alright, let that one set. And we'll put another one here. See, I'm just using this angle brush. I really like these angle brushes. The shape just does really well if you're doing some curves, like in petals, pumpkins, even. And I know there are many other types of brushes that you can use with acrylic paints, but this is what I found that works for me. This one, okay, let's see. I want this one to look like we can look down into the center, so this is where my perspective gets a little tricky. Okay. Kind of reminds me of those bloomin' onions. Did you ever have those? Go to a restaurant and they have this deep fried with that yummy seasonings, crispiness on them. I've not had those kind of things in a long time. This one back here, I'm going to add a little more color. It's still wet yet, but if you hold your pressure on your brush really gently, like, so have you ever frosted a cake and if you press too hard you get the crumblies in the frosting? That's what I'm picturing. I'm not wanting to dig into my cake as I paint on this color. Gently, I just don't want to get any of that cake crumblies in what I'm doing here, if that makes sense. So we'll let that dry. That one's gonna have to dry. So now we can come over here and work on a different one. Rinsing out my brush really well. I'm going to grab a little more white. Welcome. I see I have a couple of viewers with me. Thank you. I'm not able to see any chat if you have any chat going on, but welcome. Happy Thursday. Okay. I feel like if I put a blossom right there, it'd be kind of crowded, so I'm going to do a triangular effect right here. I could do this one, but I don't know. I think this one will be good. Okay. So this is going to look a little funny at first. It's going to look blue. I do have some white and light blue on my brush right now. I'm doing that because I want to have some of those paper thin shadowy looks on my petals. Alright, let that set for a moment. Okay, now we need to let those dry a little bit. So what can we do in here? I'm going to take a round brush and I'm going to try to make some, add to the edges here. So I think I'm still going to need to do darker, but I'm going to pick up some of this orange. Oh yeah. So the orange mixed with the green and blue, it makes it pretty dark. So I'm going to come on this edge, make it a little more defined. As you see, I'm really careful with the pressure. So we talk about this when we have paint parties. When you're using a round brush, if you have very light pressure, you can do a pretty thin line. If you need a thicker line, if you go like that, you get the thick line. So if you're working on doing some detailed work, I just rinsed this out and I was able to shape it almost into a point. So let's try that with just some red. So now I could come alongside, let's say this one, and I can get a pretty thin line. So it's all about the pressure. Okay, so back to working on our lilies. It seems that tip has helped a lot in the past few paint time parties. I teach paint parties and it's a lot of fun. So if that's something you're interested in, I have some that are open to the public, or I can also do a private party with you and your friends. So if that's something you want to do for the holidays or a family friend get together and this fall, let me know. My information's at studiobpaint.com, or you can look at it on my Facebook page. And I know I have some people that follow that are out of state. I'm going to look at doing some virtual online parties. So if that's something that you want to do, let me know and we can get it set up. To do that, I would have information that you could download and things to help you as we do the party, or and we would be live, so you could ask me questions as we go. It would be live, but you would have a private time. We wouldn't have anybody that you didn't know in on it, if that makes sense. What I'm trying to say. So I'm just cutting into some of this. I wanted that shadowed area to show, but I didn't want to take out all of the watery stuff there. There we go. Okay, how's this going over here? Coming along. I'm thinking the water is, or sorry, the sunlight is coming this direction. That way we would have these shadowed areas on this side. So I'm going to add tiny bits of shadow. Doesn't have to be a total hard line. My husband and I enjoy hiking and finding new waterfalls or interesting places and taking some photographs. Alright, I'm just gonna make some more, I'm doing it horizontally, just making some interesting strokes. Just a little bit of, to make it look like this is water. Now I've got, I added a touch of white to the green red here. I want to add a little bit of lightness. It might be a little too much lightness here. I can imagine a toad or a frog sitting on one of these lily pads, catching some sun. So I'm adding this color to the top of the color that was there, but see, I'm letting little bits of it come through. That's what gives it the interest. Might be getting a little carried away over here, but okay, let's see here. So I have some interest over here, but I'm not drawing a bunch of interest to it because this isn't where the story is. Over here with these three. So okay, I think we can start adding some layers. So we're going to brighten that up a little bit. I'm going to take some of the red, and I picked up a little bit of that cad orange. So we're going to come up, give it a little bit more light. Using that light pressure yet. This is going pretty quickly. Now I'm going to add some of this yellow in. Some of it's going to get mixed in because it's wet on wet is the technique, because when you don't let something dry before you add to it, it's called wet on wet. I know these have more detail, but I still want it to be somewhat abstract. So my brush is pretty dirty, but I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on this one. Adding a little more orange to my brush, but I did not wipe any off. Sometimes your brush could get so thick with paint you're not sure what you're painting with, so that is a good time to wipe your brush off with a paper towel, or if you have a designated cloth towel to use. Alright, now this one. So when I first did these, I put yellow on top of the white and it started to look like a fried egg to me. Just going to add a little white to these real quick before we add our color pop. This is going pretty quick. I'm not doing a lot of detail. I'm just trying to do something fun and loose painting here today. Alright, so I'm going to go in and grab some of that yellow. See, it kind of looks like an egg now. So I'm going to come in and grab some of the orange. Let some of that yellow show through. Light to this. Keeping it loose. Okay, this one. I like how that turned out. So this is going to take a while to dry. So probably I'll let it set this afternoon to dry, since those thick areas will just take longer. So I think we've got a pretty good plan here, and we could just add on maybe a little more shadowing, and so yeah, so that's going to be my plan. Thank you for joining me. Have a great day.